Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us on this edition of News 2. I'm April Knight in for Sandra Gumansing. Topping our newscast, Governor Kenneth Mapp continues to make major changes in the leadership of agencies within the territory's criminal justice system. He just announced another one affecting the Superior Court of the Virgin Islands. According to the governor, it has to do with his push for faster movement of the court dockets. Here's more.
Judge Michael Dunstan will no longer be presiding judge at the Superior Court of the Virgin Islands. That's according to Governor Kenneth Mapp in a press conference on Friday.
Judge Dunstan will retain his tenure as a judge of the Superior Court until September 26, 2019.
Dunstan was sworn in as Superior Court judge in July 2007 after a successful nomination by then-Governor John DeYoung. Judge Harold Willocks, who will officially replace Dunstan as presiding judge on June 21st, was nominated by Mapp to the bench and recently approved by the Senate. The governor didn't expressly say why Dunstan is getting booted out of Superior Court, but he implied it had something to do with his earlier observations about a slow court process and some judges not reporting to work. He said the courts are not even taking advantage of available software to modernize.
The court has yet to take any opportunity to utilize the grant of benefit offered by the federal judiciary, and the Superior Court remains lethargic, non-functioning, and simply in 2016 a paper operation.
The governor also pointed out that some 175 detainees in Golden Grove have been waiting for more than 3 years for a trial. He said that on Friday he's submitting a speedy trial bill to the Senate.
A Virgin Islands Speedy Trial Act that will require, when persons are arrested and charged with criminal offenses in the Virgin Islands, that their day of reckoning in the court is understood and clear.
Governor Mapp also said he supports recent legislation to unify the Superior and Supreme Courts of the Virgin Islands, even though it takes away the power that he just exercised in removing Dunstan away from governors altogether. Well, there were no Senate sessions today, but on Thursday, the Senate Finance Committee did hold a round of budget review hearings. We shared some of the Fire Services hearing on Thursday morning. In the afternoon, the Division of Personnel, led by Director Milton Potter, presented their budget for fiscal year 2017 in the amount of $4.14 million. That's a 19% increase from last year, and that's according to a recommendation by Governor Mapp. $3.5 million of that would come from the general fund. The increase, according to personnel officials, is due to a rise in personnel costs based on salary increases and planned initiatives. The committee also heard from the Office of Management and Budget Director Nellen Bowery, who testified on the $4.81 million request for funding to the OMB. The Community and Police Association met Thursday night with the acting St. Thomas St. John Police Chief, as well as some government officials. CAPA founder Bruce Flamone called it an excellent meeting. Among the areas or topics pushed by the 50 or so residents who attended were more community policing, more traffic stops, addressing the smaller crimes, and more convictions. Public trust in the police department was also on the table. According to Flamone, CAPA is pushing for the launch of a crime-fighting app through which residents can give tips or report crimes and accidents as soon as they happen. Thursday night was also a fundraiser for the young woman who was shot 7 times on Sunday. Meanwhile, Acting Police Chief Winsbeth McFarlane on St. Croix called a meeting on Thursday with St. Croix nightclub owners and managers, letting them know that effective immediately they will be enforcing a nightclub closing time of 4 a.m. The territory has had its share of shootings in or around nightclubs in the community. McFarlane's announcement comes in the wake of the Orlando nightclub shooting over the weekend.
3:45 a.m., the VIPD will be there to enforce the law. All patrons must be out of the nightclub before 4 a.m. and in order to give the establishment time to adhere to the law. Various government agencies was present, the Department of Licensing and Consumer Affairs and the Virgin Islands Fire Department, St. Croix District, in conjunction with the enforcement process. Acting Chief McFarland has already implemented the Late Night Initiative 2 weeks ago and is gradually moving forward with his aggressive agenda curbing crime in the territory.
Well, we hear a lot about DUIs or driving under the influence, but what you don't hear about too often is BUI or boating under the influence. On Thursday afternoon around 2:40, marine enforcement units from the police department and DPNR responded to a boating accident at a boardwalk in Christiansted. They found a boat partially submerged in the water. It was a charter, and according to the passengers, the captain was more concerned with retrieving his fishing equipment than giving them life jackets. Here's more.
Investigations reveal that John Foy, boat captain and registered owner of the vessel, was on a fishing charter with 3 tourist passengers, including a minor, out to sea. During the sea voyage, Mr. Foy noticed that the boat was taken on water and immediately returned to port. The passengers reported that Foy endangered their lives by not providing any life-saving equipment and did not request for help from other boaters while returning to the Christiansted Harbor. The passengers suspected that Mr. Foy was under the influence of alcohol during the voyage. None of the tourists reported any injuries at the time of the investigation. Mr. Foy was consuming alcohol at the time of the investigation due to suspicion of BUI.
Turning our attention to the mainland, there are some Republicans who have had it with their party's presumptive presidential nominee, so much so that they're saying they're contemplating ways of trying to give Donald Trump the boot. Concern about Trump has grown from angst to near panic, not just because of controversial Trump comments, but the way voters are reacting to him. He's trailing Hillary Clinton, but most alarming to Republicans, his favorability rating is at a historic low. A new Washington Post poll this week shows Clinton is hardly well-liked with a 55% unfavorable rating, but that pales in comparison to Trump, a whopping 70%. Say they have an unfavorable view of the presumptive GOP nominee. Discussions about cutting Trump loose are focused on the Republican convention. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin is also watching the elections closely and through a translator said he will work with the U.S. regardless of the election results.
The US is a great power. At the moment, it is probably the only superpower, and we accept this fact. We want to work with the US, and we are ready to do that. And no matter how these elections are held, eventually they will be held. There will be a new head of state elected. They will have broad authority. I know that there are complex economic and political processes in the United States. At the moment, the world needs a country as strong as the US is, and we do need the US too. But what we do not need is for them to interfere with our affairs all the time, to instruct us how to live, to prevent Europe from building relations with us.
Meanwhile, FBI agents spent an hour Friday at the mosque that Orlando gunman Omar Mateen attended, questioning officials about Mateen's relationship with other members of the Islamic Center and the community. It's one more way investigators are piecing together more of Mateen's life, from his difficult days in high school to an overseas trip to what he was doing on social media during Sunday's shooting. Emily Schmidt reports on the picture coming into view.
As the gunfire began at the Pulse nightclub, camera phones went from capturing carefree moments to recording what Miguel Leiva feared were his final moments in a crowded bathroom stall.
I felt like if we didn't make it out of there, if we were all going to die, that somebody needed to see what happened and how it all went down.
He hoped it would also convince worried family members to stop calling.
So we were just trying to, keep our phones quiet on silent so he wouldn't come back in there and shoot us.
The city of Orlando says 166 911 calls came in during the shooting, while gunman Omar Mateen used his phone inside. FBI investigators say Mateen posted to Facebook about coming ISIS attacks, and sources say he repeatedly texted his wife, Noor Salman. She also tried calling him several times, apparently after realizing her husband could be the gunman. There are more details of Mateen's past. His high school says he was suspended 48 days. He went to Saudi Arabia in 2012 as part of a group trip organized by the Islamic Center at NYU. The center says no one specifically remembered him. Weeks before the shooting, a gun store owner says employees refused to sell Mateen body armor. He was turned away before they got his name.
We did contact authorities and let them know we just had a suspicious person that was in here.
So alive, man.
Now survivors are meeting their rescuers, while mourners go to funerals, and an investigation prepares to move into its second week. I'm Emily Schmidt reporting.
Here's a look at the New York Stock Exchange with our Stock Market Watch. As you can see, everything down. The Dow 57, NASDAQ 44, S&P 6. Coming up on News 2, if you're looking for a way to help out with the victims and the families of the victims of the Orlando shooting, we have some information for you coming right up. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The Government Employees Retirement Systems Board voted on Thursday not to reinstate the agency's loan program. When the loan program was initially suspended and then indefinitely discontinued, GRS officials said it's in the interest of the system's survivability. The vote not to reinstate the loans was in spite of legislation passed by the Senate and approved by Governor Mapp that forced the system to reinstate the loan program, but with a cap of $20 million. Senator Kenneth Gittens, one of the sponsors of the legislation, responded on Thursday.
It's unfortunate that the GRS board has decided to take such a hardline stance against its own members, the same members whose contributions make up the system which allows it to exist and make further investments to further enhance the system's financial viability. The administrator of the system has testified more than once that the loan program is a solid money-making venture with guaranteed returns. That, coupled with the fact that they've allowed riskier investments and investments that at times were even questionable, causing great financial loss to the system, raises much more concerns.
Well, here's some good news for clients of Juan Louis Hospital. The St. Croix Hospital announced on Thursday that their cardiac catheterization lab machine is fully operational again. JFL physicians, nurses, and support teams started providing services with the cath lab machine again on Thursday after the machine was fixed on Wednesday. In the wake of the tragedy in Orlando, the Hebrew Congregation of St. Thomas is holding an LGBT Pride Vigil service. And that's going on right now. It began at 6:30 this evening. According to the congregation, it's, quote, in remembrance of the victims of the Orlando massacre and in solidarity with targets of hate everywhere. Here's more from Rabbi Mike Harvey.
So this service is an embodiment of that, to say that we support the LGBT community, we mourn with you, we are your allies, and to let people know that here in the Virgin Islands, even though it happened over in Orlando, if we don't stand up and say this kind of action is not acceptable, what kind of message does that send to our young people here? That when other faith leaders don't stand up, that the community doesn't stand up, that it's acceptable to go out and buy a rifle and shoot people for how they are? Absolutely not.
The Virgin Islands community is also rallying to help the victims of the Orlando shooting and their families. On Saturday, if you want to join in on this effort, you can do it and have great coffee at the same time. SOS Coffee and Bar in Red Hook is holding Pop-Up Pride from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday. They will be collecting funds, selling raffle tickets, and donating 20% of their sales that day to those affected by the shooting. They'll also be having brunch and cocktail. Their kitchen closes at 4, but the bar is open until 9 p.m. All the proceeds will go toward medical expenses and other forms of support for the Orlando shooting victims and their families. Meanwhile, Jehovah's Witnesses are holding one of the largest conventions in the region. Some 400 people showed up Friday for the 2016 Remain Loyal to Jehovah Regional Convention at their assembly hall in Frederiksted. According to the church leaders, they have attendees from as far as California and Oregon, and they're expecting attendance to rise to more than 500 through the course of the 3-day event. Well, All Saints Cathedral School is holding its commencement ceremonies. They just started at 7 p.m. at All Saints Cathedral Church. We'll have more details for you on Monday. In the meantime, their valedictorian is Siddharth Parwani. The salutatorian is Yaj Bajaj, and their class president, Irvin Mason Jr., comes in a close third. Congratulations to all the graduates. Stick around, News 2 weather is coming up next.